Today's guest is the voice of the national champions. Joining me now is Blake Friars. You've heard him all the time if you are a Minot State Beavers hockey fan that hasn't been able to make it to Mesa Arena but love following the team on their online broadcasts. He's the play-by-play man of the Beavers. Let's first talk about how you stepped onto the Minot State campus, Canadian boy coming down. How did you end up in the Magic City?
Yeah, it's a unique situation actually. I always went to Minot as a kid. Hockey tournaments and stuff, and it's only a couple hour drive from Estevan, so that was an easy decision for me to come here. And as soon as I was reading up on the broadcasting department and stuff like that, it made it a really easy decision for me to go to Minot State. And I'll say right now, me just graduating. In May here, it was easily the best decision I've ever made in my life, for sure.
Now, when you talk about identifying with a club hockey team, there's a lot of ways that students can help out a team in different roles if they're not players. Like there's managers or anybody trying to schedule trips or help the coaches out and stuff. Why did you specifically want to do play-by-play for the Beavers?
Yeah, actually, I'll even go the step before the Beavers. Actually, Nick Hallberg was working with the Minotauros actually, and he gave me a call in January of 2016. And Ken Oda was stepping down from the play-by-play job, and it was something that I've always been interested in doing. But in January of 2016, I had no experience. I had no idea. He basically just gave me a headset, gave me a roster, and I went in with cold feet and was guns a-blazing. So, I mean, that's where I got my start, was with the Minotauros. I did from January to the playoffs, and then the year after, Wade Gear reached out to me, and Nick Hallberg reached out to me, and then I got on board with the Beavers. But it was just everything aligned well for me. Everything kind of just fell into place. I kind of got lucky, to be honest, that a job opened up at the right time, and I got to jump right in. And I was so thankful for what the Beavers did for me, and gave me a chance to do what I've always wanted to do since I was about 9 years old, was to call a game. Growing up, listening to the Canucks, Jim Houston was a big mentor for me, and getting a chance to live out my childhood dream was awesome.
Because you knew that the educational aspect of Minot State was there for you, but I guess maybe
Yeah,
the way that all the practicality skills that came down before you graduated was a little unexpected.
yeah, exactly, for sure. And I learned a lot working for the Beavers. Running the TriCaster, making sure the YouTube stream is up for all the listeners to listen to, and I actually got an expanded role with the team this year. I ran social media on the road. I traveled with them for the first time this year. It was a really cool experience. I got to go to places like Colorado. We went to Utah in February before the coronavirus shut the ACHA down, unfortunately. We went to Great Falls, Montana this year. We went to Chicago. It was such a cool experience doing what I did this year for the Beavers, and I can't thank them enough.
I remember I did a little bit of that in college where I reached out to the University of Maryland club team
Mm-hmm.
and it was super rudimentary. We did the best we could. Like the Wi-Fi was always sketchy. I was usually using this laptop for the audio output and we didn't even have a camera when we first started out. I would
Yeah,
literally just turn my webcam around, do the play-by-play and just pan left to right like holding it in my chest. So it was
yeah.
super basic. So kind of relating that to you, how has the broadcast element maybe evolved since the very first time you started to now at this point after your graduation?
Yeah, absolutely. I've done about 100 plus games, and about 80 of those have been by myself. So um, it's really challenging doing the games by yourself. I actually had Noah Grant before he went to grad school at St. Cloud. He helped me out for about 20 games the second semester last season, which was a blast, and I sure missed him this year. On the broadcast this year, but doing a game by yourself is challenging. You gotta create conversation with yourself, keep the listeners engaged, and I mean, I take a lot of pride in the research. You got to do a lot of research, especially for the other team. You should know your main guys on the home team, but I think to deliver a grade A broadcast, you got to know where other teams, the history of the team, if they won any championships, if players won any awards for players on a point streak and stuff like that. So you got to be prepared. And the last couple of years, I've really evolved in that department.
There's definitely a place for college broadcasts, especially for like the families of all the players that like to follow the team. Otherwise, they wouldn't have a chance to. I mean, I heard that all the time. But like Maryland's not Olympic sports or Olympic sports, I suppose. The ones like not like football and basketball and stuff. So yeah, there's definitely value in it. And I asked like how it came along this far. Now that you're graduated, have the guys really talked about like where the broadcasts go from now? Do you have any plans to stick around Minot to keep doing it at all, or is there somebody else stepping up for you?
I am not entirely sure. That last year was my last year at Minot State. I actually reached out to a lot of junior A hockey teams in Western Canada, try to come on board with something. But I mean, it's a tough situation. A lot of teams actually reached out to me. But I mean, everything's the same. Everything's we're going to see what our budget is because the coronavirus. It's just a really tough time to get a job right now in the sports industry with everything that's going on, and it's a tough situation for everybody involved.
Mm-hmm. You talked a little bit about Jim Houston, the Canucks announcer. I first heard of him when I played NHL '98 years back.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I wanted to ask, you already mentioned him, but who are kind of like your influences in the broadcasting industry, if it's anyone besides Jim at all?
I like Chris Cuthbert. He just signed a massive deal with Sportsnet. He came over from TSN this season. He was on NBC Sports Center sometimes doing the American feeds. Bob Cole, legendary up here in Canada. He just retired at the age of 86 a couple years ago. Jim Shorthouse, who does, or John Shorthouse, I should say, does the Canucks broadcast now. He does a fantastic job. But so, I like to say there's a lot of different ways to watch a hockey game and listen to a hockey game. And for me as a broadcaster, of course I watch the game, but, I listen to the broadcasters and, different words that they use. And, you kind of got to pick up some of that stuff too.
Chris Cuthbert is one of my other favorite, like, not Doc Emmerich team announcers. Now, talking about the Beavers' pedigree here, Blake, you show up at the university. They're having the banner in the rafter already from a couple years back. They're trying to get back to that mountaintop. They get there. Unfortunately, they can't defend the championship because of what happened with COVID-19. So let's talk about the memories that you had of covering teams that went all the way to the very top of ACHA Division I hockey. What was that like? Always love covering a winner,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the biggest thing for me is just to watch the players come in out of junior and just kind of take off. Guys like Shane Cheschuk, Dylan Gatis, who in my freshman year had 8-9 points. And by the time he graduated, he was up there 30, 35 points. And just to see players grow like that. Austin Yano, one of the most electric defensemen that the Beavers have ever had. And the goaltending, too. You didn't have to worry about goaltending every single year that I was there. Unfortunately, this upcoming year, they got to get 3 new goalies, and that might be tough for head coach Rader Gear. But I think they'll be just fine in that department this upcoming season. But yeah, there's a lot of good memories. Last year, so many ups and downs. They lost to an unranked Utah team on home ice, which the Beavers rarely lost on home ice when I was there. I think they lost maybe a total of 7 games in the 4.5 years that I was there. And getting swept on the road in Iowa, I think that was a huge turning point in last year's national championship run. And just to watch such a young group. They had 12 freshmen last year. Nobody picked them to win the national championship. And I thought towards the end of the season, I thought there was a real good shot that we could possibly win this championship. And I think going in at number 6 helped the Beavers out a lot. I mean, going in as number 1, you got a huge target on your back already. A lot of added unnecessary pressure internally and externally on the team. And I think going in at 6 is just a weight off the shoulders. You go in against an Illinois team, and then they had to go through the gauntlet. They beat Lindenwood, they beat Adrian, who was the defending champs, and they go in and they beat an Iowa team who was a good team too, with a good goalie in Gedeke. So I was just so proud of those guys, and everything just came together at the right time.
You were saying how you covered the team in more of a social media capacity than when you first started. That expanded to like traveling a lot with the team, obviously having to be around them a lot more. Besides going to the national championship, because anybody can just take a picture and say, "Hey, cool, look at me, I'm at the national championship." Are there any other memories that really stick out to you being a part of this team?
I would just say that the pure dominance that the Beavers had over my time there. Every single season they had 30 plus wins. That's almost unheard of for a club team, and just dominant at home. Put up 6, 7 goals every home game. It was just a treat to watch each and every night.
They couldn't do it without Blake Friars, though.
That's right.
Exactly. So, dating back before you got to Minot State for college, growing up in Saskatchewan, going to high school in Estevan, I know you probably have gotten to know him a little bit from the play-by-play stuff because you guys are both announcers. How much credibility do you think you might have gained with Larry McFall, given you went to high school in a track area that he goes to all the time in Estevan?
I'll tell you what. I kind of wish I met Larry early on, but I did not meet Larry McFall until I got to Minot State. And Larry's a good friend of mine, and I talked to Larry all the time when I was in Minot. I always loved talking hockey with him and talking about the Habs. And we had a couple side bets the last few years at the Canucks and the Habs when they played. I was in the minus department in that, but no, Larry's good stuff, and I kind of wish I did go to the track a little bit more and connect with them a little bit, but oh well.
Okay, so like you weren't like huge into like the racing track scene in Estevan at all, just the hockey?
Not really, no.
Okay, so sticking with hockey then, NHL obviously in a weird situation, and Larry's Canadians somehow making it into this crazy playoff picture of 24 teams. Obviously, you got to kind of play the hand that you're dealt here, but how fair do you think the playoff picture ends up being? And if you had to pick some conference favorites out of the top four initially, and then maybe even a couple of qualifying round teams that could make a run, who do you see really making an impact this summer?
Yeah, I'll answer your first part of the question. Is the playoff format fair? I think it is fair. This is the best situation that Gary Bettman could have possibly done. I don't think Montreal had a shot to make the playoffs, but I think you got to take 24 just to make it work. They could have took 22, but you would have lots of buys everywhere, and I don't think Gary Bettman didn't want a team take up to a week off and sit around waiting. This way, there's a best of 5 qualifying round for the 16 teams or so that they're in the qualifying round, best of 5, and then the top 4 teams are going to play a round robin against each other just to stay sharp. So I think it's a win for everybody involved. I'll start with the qualifying dark horses. I'm not even going to be biased. Vancouver's got a really good shot to make a playoff run here if they get good goaltending from Jacob Markstrom. I think he should be in the Vezina conversation if he didn't get hurt. They got a really good young core. Another team that could make a run, I say the Winnipeg Jets. They're primed to make a run here in the playoffs. In the other way, Toronto, you never know with them. They got a good team. They got a good goaltender now, and Anderson, and they're stacked up front too. Tavares, Marner, Matthews, Nylander. So with star power like that, they're definitely primed to make a run in the playoffs. You know, for the favorites in the top 4, you got the Bostons, Washingtons. In the West, you got probably St. Louis, Vegas. I mean, all 4 of those guys could win the cup. I mean, realistically, Ben, anybody could win the Stanley Cup this year. There's no excuses. Everybody's healthy. Everybody has the same rest, and it's going to be whoever wants to win more is going to win the Stanley Cup this year. Because arguably, this is probably the hardest year to win because you got to go through the gauntlet. And if you're a qualifying team, you got to win 5 rounds to win the Stanley Cup. So
it's crazy.
The people that are saying that there's an asterisk side of the winner, that's complete BS in my opinion, and I think it's going to be a fair shake because at the end of the day, other than the best of 5, qualifying round, the rest is best of 7. So it's basically the same.
So you like your Canucks' chances to make a run from this qualifying round? I'll ask you this because the winner of the Canucks series with the Wild would play the number 2 seed, which of course isn't even set yet because there's round robin for that. So if you had your preference, would you want to play St. Louis, Colorado, Vegas, or Dallas?
Call me crazy, but I think I'd rather play the Colorado Avalanche simply because the fact that they have a rookie goaltender that is their starter, and to be honest, I don't like my chances going up against a guy like Marc-Andre Fleury, who in his career has a 13-2 record against the Canucks. I don't like my chances against him. Bennington's a good goalie. Ben Bishop's a really good goalie. And then there's this rookie goaltender who we haven't seen much of in Francois. He's only had 25 career starts, so if I was to pick a team, I would probably pick the Avalanche.
You're gonna have to talk to Jordan Willard about that because he loves his Avalanche, and a bunch of my buddies from like the football guys, like when the Eagles made their run, that was kind of my saving grace. Similar to you comparing an awesome team with a rookie goalie, I thought the Eagles' best chance of the championship game was having Case Keenum, a guy like that, come down to earth, and it happened. So that's kind of my relation to that. And still, despite it all, there's a chance that the Vancouver Canucks and Montreal Canadiens could meet in a Stanley Cup final as soon as this season. What would that be like for you and Larry McFall? Would that be like the biggest stakes bet that you guys have ever made?
Oh yeah, there were definitely some chips on the table for that one, but that is definitely not happening.
Okay, at least for the Canadians anyway, the 12ers.
Honestly, I will say though, I think that all these Pittsburgh Penguin fans that are saying that this is going to be a cakewalk for them, I think you got to be careful what you wish for because you got Carey Price on the other end. So Carey Price is very capable of stealing 3 hockey games, and in a best of 5, it's going to come down to whoever has the best goaltending.
Yeah, big time difference with that 5 to 7, absolutely. Especially when there's no home ice advantage for anybody, no matter how good you are. So
exactly, that's right.
Mm-hmm. So being a Canucks fan, of course, even stepping forward ahead of the playoffs this year, NHL going to expand, get a little more symmetrical with a Seattle expansion team. A lot of Vancouver fans talking about having like kind of a new rival to it. How much are you looking forward to that franchise? And right now, I'm trying to think of, in your opinion, do the Canucks have a top rival that's like mutual? Because I mean, like the Alberta teams kind of get paired off. Yeah. Or like Chicago, like they have playoff history recently, but I don't know how many Blackhawk fans would say it. Where do you kind of stand on that?
Well, the Chicago rivalry, that's not a thing anymore. I mean, whenever you play a team 3 years in a row in the playoffs, you just begin to hate each other. And boy, that was three really good playoff series. Unfortunately, the Canucks only won 1 out of 3, but I think this playoff series against the Minnesota Wild could kind of be like a rivalry renewed because that was a big rivalry back when Minnesota was in the Northwest Division back in the early 2000s and up into the 2010s. The famous series when Vancouver had a 3-1 series lead in 2003 and Minnesota stormed back and won the series in 7 and that's when the kind of rivalry kind of took off. Then it kind of died down when Minnesota went into the Central. So this series, even though it's a best of 5, it could be a rivalry renewed for sure.
Yeah, that was that crazy year where the Mighty Ducks went to the Stanley Cup final. I think they swept through Dallas got them a couple games, but they swept Detroit and then Minnesota in the conference final. So a big piece of the Canucks moving forward is going to be Brock Besser, UND guy. What do you think about him being a leading player, part of the core here for a few years?
Yeah, I mean, Brock Besser's gifted goal scorer in the NHL, and even dating back to his freshman year with the Fighting Sioux, he had like 16 goals as a freshman, and in the NHL, you got to have timely goals, and Brock Besser's one of those guys that can put the puck in the net, and when you pair him with guys like Pedersen and G.T. Miller and Quinn Hughes and Thatcher Demko and Tanner Pearson, the Canucks young core is unbelievable. It's probably a top 5 core in the NHL right now in terms of under age 25. So it's been a long rebuild for the Canucks, going on 5 years now, but I think the light is finally at the end of the tunnel, and they're ready to turn the corner.
How big was getting Tyler Toffoli?
Yeah, I think Tyler Toffoli was huge. Even though he only played 10, 11 games for us, I really hope that the Canucks do re-sign Toffoli this summer, as he was a tremendous fit on the line with J.T. Miller and Elias Pettersson. And if you can get him for 4 or 5 years around the $5.5 million price range, I think it would be a slam dunk for Jim Benning to do that. And like I said, he's a perfect fit. Right-handed snipers are hard to find in the NHL. Those definitely do not grow on trees. So whenever you get a chance to sign one of those, I think you got to jump at the opportunity.
The last really, really great Canucks team was back in 2011 when they went to the Stanley Cup Final. How special was watching that run with the Twins finally getting to the biggest stage of them all?
Yeah, absolutely. It was actually the 9-year anniversary of that on the 15th of June, which it still kills me to see that. But you get to the last game of the season and winner take all, and you come out on the losing end. It hurt, man. I'll be honest. I think I was in grade 8 that year, and boy, I shed some tears. Not gonna lie, that was a tough loss. But that season, those 2 seasons actually, in 2010, 2011, they won the President's Trophy, and the year after they won the President's Trophy again. So those 2 years of just the most goals for, the least goals against, Luongo-Schneider duo they were just unbelievable. They had the best power play, and to see it finally all come together after so many heartbreaking playoff exits by the Chicago Blackhawks, and they went up 3-0 in the first round that year to the Blackhawks, and they almost blew the damn series, and it came down to overtime, Game 7, and Burroughs slayed the Dragon. So I mean, that all doesn't happen without a couple of clutch goals along the way. But Vancouver went up 2-0 in that series. I thought they had it in the bag. They just couldn't win a game on the road, man. That TD Garden was tough on the Canucks, and Tim Thomas just had an unbelievable playoff series. And I mean, we won 1-0 in Game 1. We scored 13 seconds left in Game 1 in the third period. And then we scored with 4 minutes left to win 1-0 in Game 5. We rarely scored any goals against Tim Thomas. And I think they had 9 goals total in the 7 games, and just ran into all goalie, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, then they had that fast overtime goal, too, from Burroughs. It was pretty awesome to go up 2-0, I believe.
My dad was actually at that game.
Oh, yeah?
That was Game 2. Burroughs scored 11 seconds in OT, yeah.
You kind of... Yeah, go ahead.
I kind of just sense, though, after the Bruins smoked us in Game 6, I think it was 6-2, I'm like, I wasn't feeling good going into Game 7 because they had all the momentum in the world, and Tim Thomas was just on his game, and I knew it was going to be a grind to win that game. And whenever you get shut out 4-0, it's tough. But I mean, I feel bad for Luongo. He took all the blame for that. But I mean, you're not going to win much games if you don't score any goals, right?
Mm-hmm. So then, did you think that even in the games that the Canucks got ahead in, they get a 2-0 lead, they get 3-2 lead, did it feel like even, I'm not talking about the games where the Bruins won to get back into the series, but even in the times that Vancouver was winning, did it kind of feel like the Bruins were going to be there pretty much for the distance?
Yeah, I mean, when we went up 2-0, I wasn't thinking it was going to be a sweep, but I thought we were going to win the series. And honestly, Ben, it was a tale of 2 series. All the home teams won each game except Game 7, so they couldn't win a game on the road. We couldn't win a game on the road, and then Boston just wanted it more in Game 7. And when you got guys like Brad Marchand, who was a young player at that age, just kind of take over at Game 7 with a couple goals, it's tough, man. And unfortunately, that core got depleted. We all know what happened a couple years later. Mike Gillis gets fired. Alain Vigneault gets fired after the Canucks get swept by the San Jose Sharks in 2013. And it was just a downhill spiral from there, man. It's honestly sad because I honestly think that 2011 team might be a top 3 team in NHL history not to win a Stanley Cup. Mm-hmm. They were absolutely loaded.
Yeah, I definitely get that impression. They were awesome. They were really fun to watch. Objectively, too. I couldn't imagine being a fan, all that stuff.
Well, like even in the regular season, like they had 109, 112 points a year. Like every game that I watched, like you expected to win. Like you didn't expect to lose. You expect the Canucks to put up 4 or 5 goals a game, and it was just going to be that kind of night. We got a power play. All right, we're going to score on this power play because we got a good power play, and it was just such an awesome time to be a fan. And I'm kind of getting some of that the last couple seasons with Pedersen and all these young kids coming up. It's almost like rejuvenated the whole fan base.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do they become a contender again? I mean, I don't have to ask for consecutive President's trophies, but to be a team that's in the upper echelon of even like the division consistently, there are 7 this year in the playoffs.
Yeah, so I think this year was a major step in the right direction. Pedersen really took lots of strides, and everyone was thinking he would have a sophomore slump. That's not the case, and I think getting JT Miller at the draft before the season was a huge statement to the fan base and saying, all right, we're getting ready to get better. They went out and signed Tyler Myers to a massive contract. And, when you do that, some fans might say, oh, they're not quite ready. They're not ready, but they're a couple years away. But trading for JT Miller and signing Tyler Myers and drafting Pedersen and Hughes definitely accelerates the rebuild.
Mm-hmm. And now we touched a little bit earlier. I just wanted to be able to wrap with you a little bit about the kind of the future that obviously you have right now. Trying to land that sports gig has to be uncertain because of COVID-19. But in the bigger picture, I mean, where is like your dream job right now? Is it taking over for Jim Houston or something else?
Yeah, I mean, obviously every kid wants to dream of being in the NHL and playing. But I mean, I think the sports industry and broadcasting is honestly that's next best thing in sports other than playing. I mean, you still get to stay involved with the players, coaches, fans, and you get to do what you love and want to do. So I think something in the pros would be special eventually, but I mean, that's not going to happen for a long time. As you gotta wait your turn. As there's a lot of guys don't get their shot till they're in their 40s.
Yeah, well, when that does happen, Blake, don't forget about us in Minot and local podcast world. Give us a shout anytime when you make it big and come on back, all right?
Yeah, Minot's got a special place in my heart. I never thought that the best 4 years of my life would be in North Dakota, but here we are.
Absolutely. That's Blake Friars, voice of Beavers hockey. Thanks a lot, man.
No problem. Thanks for having me.